for this song. I can't wait for people to hear it. It's definitely lyrically the heaviest and darkest of
it rips.
Maybe the darkest song I've ever honestly written in just what it's about. But so I mean it spawned out of, there was Jordan Neely, the homeless man that was choked to death on the subway here in New York, the ex-Marine that choked him to death. And like, it was the discourse around it was just so appalling to me in the desire to either lionize the killer, to rationalize, justify the death, and to just kind of not feel a sense of what the fuck are we doing here by the virtue of it happening. Like, for me, that song, that whole situation is just, and like, you know, that is a bit, homelessness is something that I care deeply about, because in the Philippines, Manila, I believe, has at least 3 million homeless people.
I didn't know that was the number, but I knew it was like disproportionately a crazy number.
I'll double check it, because like I remember thinking to myself, no,
I got it.
And then like I checked again, or you can, but
I can be the guy that does my job.
It's for me, it was just a very jarring type of thing. And for me, this is very much like when it talks about trying to condense big things. You know, this was a song that I really had to condense, because to me, there's so much in that story to think about, because it's not just an unhoused person that is mentally maybe is having a mental episode. I don't want to dive into the details offhand or too offhandedly, but just speaking in general, just about the states of how people end up in that situation, whether it is through mental distress of the disordered kind, or your life in many of these safety netless ways it can fall apart, end up there, as people are just all trying to go to jobs that are on the subway, in a packed subway, on the way to and from jobs that don't support them, in any long-standing way, or for the most part is equitable or fair for what the labor that they put in, having to witness that and then just go on with their day, go back onto that subway the next day, back to work. And like there were so many parts of this that I had to like really kind of almost like, like in a movie, like, B plots of the song had to be like shaved out a bit, or had to be shaved down quite a bit. So that's where like a lot of that song just kind of gets to that disgust for the normalization of things like that in our country, and this feeling that, like, especially because, like, a lot of the album, a lot of the lyrics, start, during or towards the end of the Trump year, beginning of the Biden administration, and a lot of it was about, like, I think people are going to, lose steam. I think people are going to lose
the resistance,
fire.
right?
Yeah. And this song kind of delves into like let's actually face what is actually happening here, and like, don't be so quick to turn away from this. Don't like let this not be something that you ruminate on, rather than trying to find ways to justify this, or make this not as heavy and grim as it is.
Right.
And the second verse kind of leans a little bit more into that kind of trying to speak to a need to be more, but you're closer to the streets than the sweets, is one of the lines in the second verse.
I always think that's something people really need to get into their head more, is that you have 1,000 times more in common with a homeless or houseless person that's sitting on the street than you do someone in the high rise right above them, right?
Yeah.
Like we're, I was told as a kid, and I didn't grow up I grew up in like a very conservative household, but I was told as a kid, you're only like 2-3 decisions away, or 2 or 3 things happening in your life from where you're at now to being, in the same situation that person is, right? And I think that was like one of the most, we could talk about obviously like the subway shooting that just happened. That was a mass shooting done by an NYPD officer.
By NYPD.
That also shot an NYPD officer, and the news stories around that really tried to make it seem like that wasn't what happened, but that's what happened. All of that stuff. It's like you really got to put it in perspective in your brain, and you really got to not like give in to the abyss that is like, narratives and what's the term, various like, I don't know, various like terminologies that really like subdue what the real reality is. And this, to go back just before I forget to say this, you're right. So they say 3.1, and at one point in 2018 they said as much as 4.5 million homeless people were in Manila in the Philippines, considered the highest number of homeless people in any area in the world. So, and obviously there's a lot to get into about where that comes from in the Philippines, and the government structures or lack thereof, or the punitive measures, as well as foreign interference and all these different things that we could go on for literally 6 hours about.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think talking about Jordan Neely or any of these, you could talk about, last time we talked a little bit obviously about the George Floyd protests and the response from that. And it's just like, instead of, no matter what the situation is, instead of like looking at why this happened, how can this be subverted in the future? How can this be remedied? It was like digging into people's pasts prior to this event that no one in the event would have known. Like, it wouldn't have mattered if somebody committed
now, it's like one of those things where, for me, and like this was a song capturing this feeling actually is also a way for me. It's very current, but a lot of my I'm not sure if I mentioned it last time I was on, but like, my first experiences with that disgust was when Trayvon Martin was killed, and the way that was a very similar thing where like, the use of trying to just, Fox News just doing pictures of him with like, wearing like a do-rag or something, as if that like, oh, okay, sure. That as if that's like a justification, as if this makes this seem no, you're confirming what I think is happened here, which is this is a racial killing.
Yeah, you're confirming you're racist. Is what you're doing in that situation.
So this was a song that like that's another kind of capturing that, like you register you're going along with the bad guys when you do that. When you start to give into that just passive nihilism, passive apathy, both siderisms about this type of stuff.
Well, and it reminds me of here, not where I live, but the Chicago area, just like 30 miles east of here. It reminds me of like Laquan McDonald, where there was all this stuff out, when the video came out and everything, of like the cops killing this person that had autism or some different forms of disability or cognitive, like neurotypical things of that nature. And people, even like liberal people that were meaning well, were like, I can't believe they did this to this person that has these. And it was like, no, the point is they're going to do it. If they're going to do it to this, well-meaning, just socially awkward person that is clearly no harm to anyone, if they're going to do it to that person, they're going to do it to anyone. Was the point that people should have gotten. And instead it was sort of this weird discourse. And then, of course, the guy that was covering it up, that was the mayor there for years, like ended up, Obama and Biden tried to put them in their administration and all these different things, right? So it just brings a lot of like universal credence of the American experience in this song, I think, like for anyone from any area of anywhere that has dealt with these sorts of things. Obviously, the Neely situation was like especially gross. They're all gross, like these situations, but nevertheless, a very impactful song. I think that can resonate with anybody that pays attention to these issues and also just like lives in the real world.